Governments, they are banning people from taking their own money. You think that sounds crazy? It's literally happening right now. About a year ago, Arnold Schwarzenegger, yes, the Terminator, was detained for 3 hours at a Munich airport security. His crime? Not declaring his own watch to customs officials. Now, if a global celebrity can get locked up for his own property, what do you think is going to happen to the rest of us? Governments are tightening their grip on wealth, making it almost impossible to move it overseas. And this is not just an isolated incident. The European Union just announced that they'll be implementing the digital euro this October. Guys, capital controls are coming for all of us. But here's the good news. In the next few minutes, I'm going to break down exactly what's going on, why it may get a little worse, but most importantly, the best and most effective tools to bypass these restrictions and keep control of your wealth. So stick around, let's get into it. Now, before I list the tools, here's some context for you. Capital controls is how governments trap your wealth, either by banning you from leaving with too much of it, or by forcing you to declare everything before you enter a new country. And here's the problem with it. As Western governments are struggling financially, they're obviously incentivized to make it as difficult for you to relocate. Case in point, if you want to be done with the United States, you can't just leave. You first have to pay an exit tax, which is capital gains on your entire net worth. You're not a citizen. You are tax cattle. Now, when you declare all of your assets at the customs border, guess what? It loses its anonymity. And that's why they want to know, so they can extract as much as possible from you. By the way, this is the old border between France and Spain, now defunct, but probably going to be reintroduced soon. Anyway, if you want to enter the EU, you first have to declare anything above 10,000 euros in cash, roughly $11,000, anything in gold and silver above 10,000 euros. And when it comes to watches and jewelry, depends by country. In Germany, Arnie, he was stopped for having a watch over 21,000 euros, earning him 3 hours with cops and a 35K fine. The craziest part, he was actually in Germany to sell his watch. Right now, capital controls, they rely on physical assets being reported at the border. But with digital restrictions tightening, this may become far more difficult, far harder to evade in the future. And by the way, that's one of the reasons why many people choose not to fly in airports. You can go by car with your family in Europe. It's quite unlikely that you'll be searched by police. Buses and trains, also a low-risk option. Just make sure that you have a mundane, worn-looking luggage. And airports, just avoid them entirely, guys, like the plague. It's not the 1990s anymore. No need to risk it all. So what actually works? Well, if you absolutely need to move wealth through an airport, then your best bet is going to be with expensive silver numismatic coins. And why silver and not gold? Simple, because agents, they know that an ounce of gold is roughly $3,000. So with 2 or 3 of them, you're going to get to the reporting threshold. But silver, you're gonna need a lot of silver, right? And you can buy expensive coins such as the 1847 Victoria Gothic crown, which in very good condition goes up to $30,000. But to the average agent, it's just another collectible. And if they ever ask, you can always say, grandmother's inheritance, or I'm a numismatist. It's still risky, but can be done. Now, when it comes to gold, what you want to do is you want to put the plastic pouch inside your wallet, specifically with a bunch of other coins. And the reason why you want to put that plastic container inside is because through the scanner, it's going to look like either another coin or one of those store tokens you use for the trolleys. Now, the problem with gold bullion is that it's very difficult to justify for personal use, unlike wearable objects or practical tools, which is why a more convenient strategy, and one used by many wealthy individuals, is gold watches, jewelry, designer clothing because they integrate with regular accessories and aren't always classified as financial assets. Take Arnold's case, right? The airport security most likely nabbed him because he is a global, very well-known celebrity. They knew that it was going to get media coverage and then scare away those who actually want to do it. But in reality, it's a very practical method, one used by many Chinese and Middle Eastern individuals. Now, however, if you are going to be traveling with jewelry, watches, designer clothes, make sure that they're not in the original shopping bags, the casing, make sure that they don't have the retail pricing or papers, the protective screen, because that's exactly what Arnold had, because he was going to sell it at an auction. And it had the original casing, the papers, it was basically in a suitcase. It's kind of hard to argue it's for your personal use. That's why he got screwed. Another popular tool is jewelry, particularly amongst women. Dame de France, after all, right? Well, one of the most famous examples was Elizabeth Taylor, and she had a collection worth $156 million, and she was traveling all across the world, no questions asked from border guards, no real problems. Now, what's interesting about gold jewelry, and it's different from coins or bars, is that under US law, it is not classified as a financial asset, which means it doesn't fall under the threshold for reporting requirements, as long as it's for personal use. If it is for commercial, guys, border guards can ask questions. And by the way, just a small caveat, countries like the UK, EU, Canada, they may impose a tax over certain amounts, but it's a less conspicuous way of traveling with larger amounts, particularly if you use very interesting brands such as Alvier, and they craft jewelry that is almost 100% pure so that you can actually move larger amounts. Now, you may have noticed I have yet to mention cash. Well, that's because cash is one of the worst ways to bypass capital controls. Number one, most countries, they have restrictions on how much you can actually use. And number two, it's just not discreet. I mean, if you go through an airport security terminal with 50 grand in your suitcase, guess what? Nobody's gonna believe your sob story about your grandma's inheritance. So it's not the 1990s anymore, guys. Stay clear of it. But it does beg a very good question, which is what does rank as number one? And it's the only one that is truly liquid, where you can move large sums internationally because it is borderless. And that's crypto. It's not gold, it's not cash, it's not even offshore banking. Due to its decentralized nature, and you can literally carry millions on a USB stick, no borders, no CRS, no know your transaction crap. It doesn't even have to be in your own name. You can go through over-the-counter dealers, convert it into fiat without too much banking compliance. What you want to build, however, is a robust, long-term off-ramping solution for your crypto that lets you convert it into fiat and not own it in your own name. Because guys, the EU, they're also coming out with DAC 8 starting with next year. Essentially, all crypto exchanges will be forced to report your transactions to the government automatically, okay? So you want to use private cryptos, you want to make sure to use corporate accounts. I've made a bunch of videos on obfuscation techniques. You can check them out over there. Now, we talked about gold, jewelry, watches, cryptos, all great tools to move your wealth discreetly. But the real question is, why play defense when you could be going on offense? Because ultimately, the best way to avoid capital controls is not to live under them at all. Guys, governments are going to always find ways how to grip your finances. Look at the EU, look at their EU digital euro that's coming in October, or most likely, they're going to ask you to report your cryptos automatically at some point. And if you have an offshore account with a bunch of money stacked over there, but you can't use it, then what's the point? I made a video a few months ago on how you should use both the East and the West in order to have a better life. The West, because that's where you grew up with the commercial and contractual nature of doing business. That's where the money is. But the East is where you actually vibe with the culture, where you actually value the freedom that they have over there, like in Southeast Asia, Middle East, or Latin America. And use each place accordingly. Don't just look at it from black or a white perspective. It's a bit of shades of gray. Anyway, that's it for today's video. If you enjoy it, guys, as always, share it with a friend. Like it, subscribe, do whatever, but it genuinely helps with the algorithm. I already want to thank you all for your massive support. Thank you very much. It means a lot to me. I also made a previous video on how private foundations work with charities to make you tax-free. You can go check it out over there. I'll be seeing you though next time. Until then, bye-bye.